You know, folks, I use this phrase Islamo-Nazi not just because it sounds clever, but because it has real roots, historical roots. And there are many places on the internet where you can read about it, many books where you can read about it, and it being the history of this Palestinian movement. The modern history of this Palestinian movement within the last 100 years has its roots in Nazi Germany. There is a piece from several years ago by Karen McQuinlan in The American Thinker, and it's entitled appropriately, Hitler's Long Shadow Over Israel. Why do so many Arabs sound like Nazis when they talk about Jews, she asks. The answer lay buried for decades in the archives of the Third Reich. Then a generation of younger German scholars expanded their attention beyond the death camps of Europe to Hitler's activities in the Middle East. What they discovered, it was Hitler who financed the modern jihadi movement. Nazi-Arab collaboration was crucial to the final solution. The Third Reich financed and trained the Muslim Brothers of Palestine and Egypt in terrorism and focused their anti-modernity rage on the Jews. And one of the first people Hitler told about his plans to kill Europe's Jews was the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, the infamous Mufti of Jerusalem, said to be Yasser Arafat's uncle, his cousin, but he was Arafat's mentor. That's a fact. And you can go on the internet right now, ladies and gentlemen, and you will see Adolf Hitler and this Mufti shaking hands, big smiles on their face. As a matter of fact, it was Mufti who kept pushing and pushing and pushing for the final solution, for the extermination of the European Jews and the Jews in the Middle East. And the Third Reich preserved the memo, the minutes, and a photo of their famous handshake in 1941. Husseini was his name. Husseini was passed along to Goebbels, who established him as the Nazi voice to the Middle East. It was the most popular radio program of the long war years, broadcast daily into every cafe. This Nazi station was listened to by the entire male population, Arab and Persian, including most famously Ayatollah Khomeini. It was an intoxicating mix of militant Islam, Nazism, and war propaganda. The Palestinian leadership in Hitler successfully collaborated on a crucial step of the final solution. Mob violence and a reign of terror pressured Britain to shut down Jewish immigration to what is now Israel. They trapped the Jews in Europe, where 6 million perished in the killing fields and death camps. Adolf Eichmann's deputy, Dieter Walensky, stated at his Nuremberg trial that the Mufti's importance, quote, must not be disregarded. The Mufti had repeatedly suggested to Hitler, Ribbentrop, and Himmler the extermination of European Jewry. The Mufti was one of the initiators of the systematic extermination of European Jewry and had been a collaborator and advisor of Eichmann and Himmler in the execution of the plan. Unquote. This is the founding father of the Palestinian movement. Winston Churchill spoke in the House of Commons against the shutting down of Jewish immigration to today's Israel. He clearly saw the Nazi hand behind the riots. He said, "We are now asked to submit, and this is what rankles most with me, to an agitation which is fed with foreign money and ceaselessly inflamed by Nazi and by fascist propaganda, because the Mufti was funded by the Nazis and the fascists in Italy." Hitler's influence has been prematurely embedded in Arab culture. Permanently embedded in Arab culture. During World War II, there was a popular song among the Arabs, Allah is heaven, Hitler on earth. Sheikh al-Qaradawi, the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, in his weekly sermon, this is today, meaning 2012, in his weekly sermon broadcast on Al Jazeera, which is broadcast right into your home on cable, ladies and gentlemen, to an audience of 60 million, prayed about the Jews, quote, "Oh Allah, kill them, down to the very last one," unquote. This is not history, this is today, in the past few years. And he went on, throughout history, Allah has imposed upon the Jews who would punish them for their corruption. The last punishment was carried out by Hitler. And it goes on. The Palestinian national movement was founded by Hitler's henchman, al-Husseini, this Mufti, and the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. The founder of the PLO, Yasser Arafat, was trained by German Nazi army officers who were welcomed in Cairo after the war. He adopted the name Yasser to honor the Muslim Brotherhood's terror chief of the 1930s who kidnapped Arabs in Western clothes and threw them into pits of scorpions and snakes. Fellow Arabs. The continuity is striking. Reich set the brothers up with a printing press and fake photos of alleged torture of Arabs by Jews, just as today Iranian, Egyptian, Palestinian state TV broadcast demonstrations of Jews stealing Arabs' eyeballs and killing Arab children to use their blood in matzah, organizing in mosques and schools and workplaces with Hitler's funds. The brothers spread lies that Jews plan to destroy the Al-Aqsa mosque in Jerusalem and trample on the Koran, the same exact lies Yasser Arafat used to launch the Second Intifada. On the Ramadan after 9/11, Egyptian President Mubarak launched a 41-week dramatization of that Nazi favorite, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Hitler has never left the Middle East. For almost 70 years, the Arab world has been pickled in Nazi-Jewish hatred. In the words of Matthias Kunzel, author of Jihad and Jew Hatred, if there is one theme which unites Islamists, liberals, Nasserites, and Marxists, it is the collective fantasy of the common enemy in shape of Israel and the Jews, which almost always correlates with the wish to destroy Israel. Jewish hatred is indispensable to Arab leaders, from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to Iran to the Palestinian Authority, in their fight against democratic Western values. Nazi jihadism didn't win without a fight from the modernizing forces in Egypt. Many signs indicate that Israel would have been a welcome neighbor, and it goes on. And Hamas in particular, where does Hamas come from? Hamas was formed, ladies and gentlemen, in 1987. It is a direct offshoot of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood movement. And Hamas helped create in our own country this group CARE, which runs around TV claiming to be a civil rights movement. And Hamas grew out of dissatisfaction with the PLO because the PLO wasn't brutal enough. And as you know, they took over the Gaza Strip, defeating the Fatah Party. The Fatah Party, headed by Abbas, who we're told is a moderate Palestinian. Do you know last year Abbas praised this very mufti, this Islamo-Nazi mufti, who helped develop the systemic murder of Jews in Europe and who'd slaughtered unknown numbers of Jews and moderate Arabs in the Middle East? Now, with that in mind, now you know why Hamas fights the way it fights and aims its missiles the way it aims its missiles. Now you know why Yasser Arafat could never agree to peace with Israel, even when Israel was giving him 98% of what he wanted originally. Now you know why this war will never end, because this is an offshoot today of the modern Nazi movement. That's what Hamas is, and the other radicals and terrorists in that particular region of the world. There's no peace treaty that can be reached with them. There's no desire to live in peace, neighbor to neighbor. There's no ceasefire. And to watch the President of the United States, for the third time, to go on and on about he's concerned about civilian casualties in Gaza and the Gaza Strip, when he knows damn well he has access to the intelligence that this is exactly how the Islamo-Nazi fights, particularly the Islamo-Nazi who believes that death is a reward. And then the Secretary of State, buffoon, old mashed potato face, the same man that sold us down the river in 1972, the same man who sold down American troops when he lied about our troops, when he gave aid and comfort to the enemy. You know, the 2004 Democrat nominee for president. You know, the current Secretary of State, John Kerry, when he said this. Cut to, go.
They told the stories of times that they had personally raped, cut off ears, cut off heads, taped wires from portable telephones to human genitals and turned up the power, cut off limbs, blown up bodies, randomly shot at civilians, razed villages in fashion.
That's enough, you liar. The idea that a political party in this country would nominate you for president, the idea that a state in this country would elect you to the Senate time and again, the idea that you're our Secretary of State, that mashed potato face of yours, the face of the United States when you go into meetings, a man who stabbed every Vietnam soldier, airman, naval officer, Navy, whatever, military personnel in the back, now stabs our ally Israel in the back. I would call on the Los Angeles Times to release the videotape that you have had all these years of the Khalidi going away party at which Barack Obama spoke. Khalidi, a mouthpiece for Hamas. Khalidi, a dear friend of Barack Obama. Khalidi, a professor at one of the Ivy League universities in New York City. This is who we're ruled by.